Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm gonna review Intel's latest 12th generation i5-12600K. But before that, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe down below, and thank you for watching. Now before I begin with this video, I'd like to ask everyone for a small favor. Please go ahead and hit the like button down below. It really helps to grow the channel and I appreciate it very much. Also, if you're new here, do consider to subscribe to my channel as I have many videos to view. So, without further ado, let's get down to this review. So, I've been tinkering around with this platform for a few days now to make sure I give you guys the best possible review and also hopefully answer some questions that you may have about the Intel's latest 12th gen Core i5-12600K. And you know what? This is the best processor for $299 on the market, hands down. So let's begin. We're gonna start off with the processor first. As you know, this thing came out just recently on Thursday, and it features 10 cores, 6 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores for a total of 16 threads. Max turbo frequency is 4.9 gigahertz. Also, it has a base power of 125 watts and a maximum turbo power of 150 watts. It features the latest Intel technology, which is 10 nanometers. Finally, they went down to 10 nanometers. It's about time. And also 20 megs cache. And this thing destroys everything, all the benchmarks for the price to performance. And I'll show you that later on. Now, I did purchase this at Micro Center on a budget, so this is pretty much what a budget build will look like. I went with the cheapest platform here, which is the MSI Pro Z690-A DDR4. That's right, because I really didn't want to go over 500 bucks. So this motherboard was $220 and the processor were $299, and when you combo this deal out together at Micro Center, it's 500 bucks. And really that's all I was willing to spend. Otherwise, if you were going to jump into a DDR5 motherboard, it would definitely cost you more than $220. I seen the cheapest one, I think it was like $300, and then you're going to have to spend another additional $160 on DDR5 RAM. That was, I believe, the cheapest kit they had. So I kind of stayed with this to show you that, you know, you could still enjoy all the performance. You don't have to really go crazy. So basically, in this particular build here, the only two new parts is the motherboard and the processor. Everything here is just some used parts that I had laying around, but I think it's definitely enough to show you the performance. So let me continue on with the rest of this build. Here I am using a pretty sizable, nice power supply that I had laying around. Of course, you don't have to go overkill like this, but I wanted to use something like this because I am going to overclock and squeeze out all the nooks and crannies out of this build here to show you the best possible FPS and benchmarks. So I have a Rosewill 1200 watt platinum fully modular power supply, which I picked up many years ago when the crypto mining went down and everybody was getting rid of parts for cheap. So I had this thing laying around for a couple of years before mining became popular again. So I might as well use it for this build because I am going to overclock. Next, as you've seen, I have this motherboard here, and it's pretty decent. This is not the Wi-Fi version. This is, like I said, hands down the cheapest motherboard probably all around you could buy. $220, but it does its job. I am using 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes each, 3200 megahertz CL16s. These are the GSkill RGBs. I love this RAM. It really works well. And I have the XMP profile, of course, activated, so it's running at that full 3200 megahertz. Next, I am using a 500 gigabyte Western Digital M.2 NVMe for this build here. That's pretty much it for the hard drive. For the storage, it's enough to make all the tests that I need. Also, something very important that you may have some questions about, and that is the cooling option. As you know, these motherboards have a different socket, and like this particular one has only, it doesn't have the double holes, so you could fit your older CPU coolers or whatever you have, liquid or tower coolers. You would have to spend more money on some of the more expensive motherboards that would have double holes in each corner there for you to be able to use the old ones. But I was able to, believe it or not, use this old Corsair H100i water cooler here. It's a 240 millimeter one, and you see that's what it comes. If you guys are familiar with this particular bracket that comes with this Corsair cooler, this is fully compatible with no modifications at all. As you can see, these pieces here, they move up and down and they fit perfectly. So this thing works without a hitch. And the standoff screws that I used, this was actually off an older platform, an i7-7700K that I was using, and it fits like a charm. Now, there was a rumor also that a 1366 socket coolers could fit. I had some of those too that I tried, but no, they did not fit at all, not quite, so you cannot use that. But I think water coolers that have an adjustable brackets underneath, like this one, it has like technically 3 sizes. It fits so perfect, no issues at all. And the thermal paste touches the CPU perfectly. The temperatures are excellent, so I was able to get away with that without buying any additional coolers or any additional brackets. So that's some information for you guys. Help you out there to save some money. Maybe you have a cooler like this laying around, so you don't have to spend money, but I think this more than enough. The temperatures are pretty good. I am also overclocking this. As of now, I am running at 5.1 gigahertz. I was able to get to 5.2, but there was some crashes. I am on the original BIOS. For this motherboard, there is a new one already available, but with this motherboard, it's a real pain to update the BIOS, and you really got to get lucky with the USB. And so far, I haven't been. So this is the original BIOS with it. I was able to overclock, and 5.1 right now is pretty stable. And remember the way this works, which is fantastic, and I'll show you while we're in game. It's the first 6 cores are going to be at 5.1 gigahertz performance cores, and then the additional 4 are going to stay at 3.7. So you have your 6 strongest cores really doing its job for gaming, and the performance is really good in my opinion. Okay, so let's go over the rest of this build here. I am using a Thermaltake View 31 case here that I had laying around for a while, kind of saving it for a special build like this, with tons of Thermaltake Riing fans. I got 3 on the left 120mm RGBs, and then 3 120mm RGB Thermaltake Riing fans on the right, and on the bottom I have 2 140mm blue Riing fans. Those are not RGB, but right now I'm just running it all blue. And for the graphics card, I have the best card that I had for years now. I'm also on the budget. I refuse to pay full price on any of the graphics cards. This is the best one I have right now, which is the RTX 2080 Ti. This is actually a Dell version. I've used this card on many of my reviews. It is on par with an RTX 3070, in some cases slightly a little bit better. It does have that 11 gigs of VRAM, and it's still quite relevant and definitely still good to test out the newer platforms like this. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the build. Now we're going to jump into some few performance benchmarks. I'm going to show you how that looks, and then we're going to finish it off with some gaming test benchmarks. So without further ado, let's get to it. And here really quickly, I just want to show you the motherboard BIOS. This is pretty much the original BIOS version, day one. I know they released another one for the month of October. Definitely recommend you guys upgrading it to that, but I was not successful doing so. I just couldn't get the USB, this BIOS to read the USB with the file. Very unfortunate, but I was able to overclock this, so I'm happy with that. So always remember, load up your XMP profile. As you could see, I'm running at 3200 megahertz. That's the speed that I have exactly on those GSkills. Otherwise, stock, I think it was like 2400. I remember that or something. And I am running 5.1 gigahertz. Very simple. Again, this is not an overclock guide, but this may be helpful. I am running the P cores at 5.1 gigahertz, so the 6 performance cores are running 5.1 on all cores. The E cores are left on auto here, which is 3.7 megahertz. Very interesting to do. Perhaps overclock this as well and see how much more performance, but for now it's left on auto. And I did not do anything with the CPU voltage. I left it on auto as well here, and doesn't go any higher than 1.338 volts. I'm happy with this performance. Again, I'm not recommending these settings, but showing you just how easy it is. Definitely if you go above 5.1, you got to tinker with the CPU core voltage, that's for sure. But I was able to do benchmarks like Cinebench R20 and gaming benchmarks, no problem with the settings, and the temperatures are good and everything is good. It does not go any higher than 1.338 volts. So that's it. Now I'm going to show you some benchmarks, so stay tuned. Here is Cinebench R20 Benchmark. We'll start off with the multi-core, and as you could see, it's a pretty damn good score, 7413. So far, that was the best I got. Now remember, this is overclocked to 5.1 gigahertz, so this is definitely higher than the stock settings. And as you could see, it actually beats out the older generation Ryzen Threadripper, which is 16 core and 32 threads. That's right, can you believe that? That he actually beats that by almost 1,000 here, about 800 and change. That's very impressive. And of course, some other similar setup like 8 cores and 16 threads just more than doubles it. So this thing is really fantastic. It's really good. And let's see what we got for the single core. Boom. Single core here, we got 749, which is an amazing score. On this chart, I got some oldies, but look at that. It really destroys the 7700K. And that thing had a pretty decent single core too, especially when overclocked. Definitely could get over 500 on that. But again, this is overclocked, and it should be interesting when I overclock the efficiency cores as well. I will do later another benchmark video just for Cinebench. Okay, so let's go on to the next benchmark. And lastly, here is Cpuz. Now let me show you some of the benchmarks I went against, starting with the i9-9900KF here they had, which is an 8-core 16 thread. As you could see, the latest i5 decimates it. Look at that, single core performance by 50%. It's incredible. Look at that. And also look at that. That's what, like 30% more too on or so, maybe higher on multi-thread. That's just incredible leap in performance. Intel really did it. And even if we go higher to, let's say, something like 11900K, same thing, 20% performance on the single core, and here's another 2025 on the multi-thread. It's really incredible. What else? And let's go to even this one here, 10900K. Let's see how that looks, and it even beats out the 10900K, which has 20 threads. It still beats it in multi-thread, and 40% more on single core. So there you have it. This i5 is simply a beast, and I'd really love to see this cool thing here. Never seen that before, right? Cores 6+4 and 16 threads. It's really cool, and yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. So the very last thing I'm gonna show you now is some gaming test benchmarks, and then we'll wrap up this video, so stay tuned. Starting off with Hitman 3, let's go over the settings. As you can see, I'm using the RTX 2080 Ti. It is overclocked, 150 megahertz on the memory and 400 megahertz on the core, to get as much performance as possible for this really strong processor here. And i5-12600K is overclocked to 5.1 gigahertz on the performance cores. Now, being that this is a new processor, unfortunately on the MSI Afterburner, the core clock is not showing up as an option. That may come in later on with an update, so we're gonna leave it like that for now. And I am on 1080p ultra settings, everything maxed out except a motion blur off, and this is the kind of performance you could expect. Very good. And of course, if you scooped up an RTX 2080 Ti for a good price back in the day, you know, 2-3 years ago, whatever, definitely worth keeping, because to me the RTX 2080 Ti is still really good, especially if you get a really good model one. They're really good at overclocking. Let me look at the performance I'm getting out of this thing here. And you see the CPU usage is pretty low on this game here. Totally crushing this game on Ultra on 1080p. I really love this board. The visuals are excellent. Really reminds me of Cyberpunk 2077. I just wish I could get the same FPS with this card on Cyberpunk 2077, but unfortunately that's just not gonna happen.
This one, and it says I can make a lot of money to begin some experiment.
They don't want people like us for that sort of.
And being that this processor is only $299, at least at Micro Center, you may see it for, you know, $320 or $340 or somewhere else, but Intel is going to have to drop the price for the Core i9s, you know, the previous generations, that's for sure. Because this thing destroys the 10th and 11th gen i9 generation, i9 processors. So definitely puts them on the spot there. Alright, so that's it for 1080p. Let's see how the 4K looks. And now I'm back on 4K resolution. I always like to do 1080p and 4K for these games. Again, this is all maxed out. I think this is really good.
That is too close, sir.
Yeah, this is a really good looking game.
Spoken like a man.
Look at the usage on this one. Whoosh! 18, 19, 20%. Right now the processor is freezing. It's sleeping. Unbelievable. And we're averaging, you know, just almost 80 FPS. Very good. The 1% lows are really good. They're not really moving. And that's the beauty about this processor. You got those efficiency cores, and from what I understand, if you're streaming, you're doing multitasking, you're not gonna really drop a lot of frame rates, especially the 1% low. So it's really good stuff here. All right, let's try a next game here. Let's see what we got. So let's take a look next. Here is Cyberpunk 2077, one of the best visual looking games out there, and definitely not the easiest one to run, but seems to do pretty good with the setup here. We're gonna start off with 1080p, full screen, ultra settings, everything maxed out with motion blur off. And I'm not going to be messing around with DLSS or ray tracing, none of that. So just going to do 1080p and 4K with the same settings here. Opa, and here we are. Not bad at all. 1080p on ultra, above 100 FPS. Can't really complain. It looks fantastic. Now, you may hear the fans. I'm sure you actually could hear the fans for sure. Unfortunately, this is a blower style card from Dell, which there was a couple of videos out there saying it's a bad card and it's had some issues. I have not had any issues. Had this thing over 2 years, I think, and it works perfect. This version that I have actually has a back plate. You do have to increase the fan speed, and that's why you hear it. Running at 55% on the fan speed to keep the temperatures nice. As you can see, the temperatures are pretty nice, as good as you could hope, at least for the games I've tried so far. Again, the 1% lows are looking real nice, and that's what you get with newer technology. You know, like that's the whole point. No frame drops, good 1% lows. All right. Let's switch it up to 4K. Yeah, not gonna get high FPS here. This is the ultimate benchmark game, but it looks damn realistic. Again, we're on ultra settings, 4K, motion blur off. This game looks amazing on 4K, and this is a 4K TV here. By the way, if you're still here and watching the video, I am using a nice 55-inch Samsung Q70. It is a 120 hertz panel on for 1080p at least, I think. Maybe even 4K, I forget, but it's definitely a TV to consider. It's great for gaming, and you can get it for a really good price. So it's not bad, you know. We're on the low 40s averaging here on 4K, all maxed out. Is that what you usually get with a 2080 Ti in this game? I'm not sure. I think it is pretty close to it, so. Wow. Alright, let's move on to the next game. Now here's an oldie, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but still an excellent game to use for a benchmark, especially on a new build. And we're starting off on 1080p on the Ultra preset. Let's take a look at some settings here. Yep, 1080p full screen. Ultra preset, I think with everything but the motion blur off. And this is the kind of FPS you could expect here. Very good stuff, as you could see.
Come on, just do it. Not anymore, Mr. Lead Archaeologist. Your employment has been terminated. Please, no. I have money. I can pay you.
You work for Trinity. What did they find?
Well, they've been searching for a temple entrance for many years. Today they found it. I have to go warn my sister. She's on her way here now.
Jonah, Trinity just tried to kill a local archaeologist.
Oh, God.
I have to find what they're looking for.
This is Commander Rourke. All teams, get ready for Operation Blackout.
I know this. Got to make my way down. Okay, this should work. All right.
This is Commander Rourke. I want the site secured ASAP. When Dr. Dominguez arrives, we all go in.
Alright, let's wrap this game up with 4K settings. Again, we're on the Ultra preset. Motion blur off.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. I don't think I've ever seen the processor so low, 10-11%. Look at that. As low as that in certain cases. 11, look at that, unbelievable.
All units, get ready. Dr. Dominguez is on his way down.
Damn, I better hurry.
Alright, one last game left, and I'll wrap up this video. And finally, we're coming to the end of the video. The last game here is Resident Evil 8 Village. Let's take a look at the settings. I'm going to run this one on 1080p, full screen. Everything is maxed out. As you can see, we're at 12 gigs in the red. Remember, this card is only 11 gigabytes of VRAM, and it is still quite relevant. If you have a card like this, then you are lucky. Everything is maxed out. And yeah, we're definitely crushing it. Now be sure to subscribe if you're new and hit the bell notification. I'm going to be doing plenty other videos testing out this processor with other games, individual videos. I kind of get into a little bit more of in-depth of each individual game and multiple different settings. So if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, hit the bell notification. And my overall opinion, as you know from the beginning, this processor is definitely a game changer. This is the one to have. For $500, you should be able to scoop up a nice motherboard and this processor. Especially if you live close to a micro center. Totally crushing this game. Alright, that is it. Don't forget to leave some comments down below. And I'll see you guys in another video. Goodbye.